Yeah, it has. We saw with all the change what Chelsea was having with the different managers, and it just didn't seem as, I don't know, as consistent as because we saw with Alex Ferguson. We know it was there, but then it was a different manager here. It was a different manager there, and so it doesn't seem as consistent. But they still go down as one of the great teams. But this fixture between now with Solskjaer and Frank Lampard. It's a very interesting one with both of the teams and where they are at this particular time.
Yeah, especially at this particular time, because at the start of the season they faced each other on the opening day. Are they where we thought they would be at this stage of the season?
Yeah, I think this is a fair point. Obviously, the change of managers, and they both got a relatively young squad. Both played reasonably well all season, I suppose, and I think where they are in the league probably suits both of them the way they've played.
I think probably with Chelsea there was an expectation that this was going to be a season of transition. It looks like it's panning out that way for Manchester United, but was there a bit more optimism about them, particularly after winning the game as well as they did, certainly in terms of the scoreline against Chelsea?
Definitely. I was at Old Trafford that day. I remember talking to someone at United who basically said, yeah, there's been a good vibe in the camp. I don't know where some of the negativities come from. With that only fostered then by the 4-0 win. But the way it's gone since then, it feels like both clubs are where the other would have been expected to be. Because I think everyone expected with Chelsea maybe that there'd be more trouble earlier on, and then they'd find their groove during the season, and that United would have a bit more about them. But the opposite actually happened. And Chelsea still have a bit more of a sense about themselves, I think, as a team than United.
I think we're seeing a Man United, and we're seeing the Man United goals and everything, what's happening. But in this particular game, Chelsea done very, very well, missed some chances. And in the end, I thought that Man United, the scoreline for me was a little bit unfair on Chelsea, and that's why, off of the back of it, yeah, Chelsea could look at it and say, yeah, we've got a lot to look forward to. I've seen Daniel James scoring his first goal and that. But the fact is that it wasn't a performance for me from Man United that made me feel like, oh yes, Man United are going to be unbelievable this season.
In the press room that day after the game, we were trying to dare each other to write, that's the worst 4-0 you'll ever see. But no one had the bottle to write it.
Nobody do it. No.
Yeah, because Frank Lampard afterwards, you could see he chances, and remember it's a young Tammy Abraham, it's his first game, it's a big game for him, and he missed a couple of chances. He was quite unlucky, and when I watched the game I thought that 4-0 is quite flattering on him.
Yeah, and I mean it was one of those cases where United caught them on the break once the game opened up, which has been a bit of an issue for Chelsea this season.
Frank Lampard's made it quite clear that he wants to bring new players in. He sort of made do with the young players that he had and turned them into something that I think people didn't quite expect from them, certainly at their best this season. But Ziyech has come in, who's been so exciting. We've seen him against Premier League sides when he's played for Ajax in the Champions League. But he could be a really exciting addition to this Chelsea lineup.
Yeah, he could be great. Obviously, he's been phenomenal for Ajax. All their team. The money they've made from that team in the Champions League a couple of years ago, and it's a great signing for Chelsea. Like you say, the young lads have come in. Frank's done a tremendous job in Miles with obviously not signing any, but I think he'll be the first signing of a lot for Chelsea in the summer. The
thing with Ziyech is that he's one of those creative players, and when you watch Chelsea, especially at home, I think they were expecting a bit more from their creative players, and then because of what Hazard done for them, they had one particular player who, in that role, could make something happen. Yeah. And I think that it's a brilliant signing. If he can hit anywhere near the form, it's a fantastic signing.
They've gone with blunt Chelsea behind Tammy, haven't they?
Yeah.
There's not much goals or creativity coming from behind.
Well, that's the thing. When you watch them at home, some of the balls into the box, so it's not been good enough.
Well, just after the signing was announced, the Hakim Ziyech deal, Premier League Today spoke to a Dutch journalist about the winger's impact in Eredivisie.
I think he's introduced himself quite impressively last season at Spurs, against Spurs in the semi-finals of the Champions League, and this season in the group stage at Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. He's like the creative mastermind of the side. He plays from the right and from the centre as well in the number 10 role, and he makes things happen that are not really actually being seen by others. Like he sees spaces and opportunities that other players don't really often see. He can score goals. He's more of a creator than a finisher, though. He's a often brilliant left-footed right winger who can play as a number 10 as well. They call him the magician in Holland, and there's not too many people here who disagree with that nickname. He can be brilliant with his left foot.
He can be brilliant, and he's productive as well, with 166 goals and assists combined since the 8th of December 2012. That's more than anyone else in Eredivisie. 79 goals in that time and 87 assists.
It's impressive, obviously, and we've seen him play very well for Ajax in a brilliant Ajax team in the Champions League. But then you have to say, if he can transform that consistency on a regular basis in the Premier League, then you can really say that he's something special, because I think it would be pretty easy to get yourself up for big games in the Champions League, and the Dutch League is not of the standard, with all due respect to it, that he's going to need to find in the Premier League. So those are good stats, but then, you know, once he comes here, we'll see what it's about.
Does the fact that we have seen, as you mentioned, the performances at Champions League level mean that he's more likely to be a player who's going to adapt, that his figures are going to translate?
Well, I suppose he's not kind of... I mean, he's done it at the highest level, so there's not that same pressure suddenly that he's making the leap now. So I mean, that's reassuring for him, I suppose. And I think a lot of people in Holland as well talk about his extreme mental strength. I think he's had quite a tough background. His dad died when he was 10, and it was a family of 10, and he, I suppose, very quickly became like the main breadwinner. And he had a few knockbacks there in his career as well, where Van Basten didn't rate him, and kind of just kept persevering.
Like Wright, he says, it's all right doing it in the Champions League. When you come into the Premier League, it's a different kettle of fish, and obviously, you know, they haven't had that creative player since Hazard left. So I'm sure you find it tough early on, but his form for Ajax and in the Champions League.
The thing as well, James, is like you will know that to be that, he has to be that consistent on a weekly basis in the Premier League. You know how hard it is for these players when they come across.
Yeah.
Especially the number 10s, the talented players. They sometimes get a bit of a rough deal against the smaller clubs, if you like. So I'm sure he'll do well.
Would that be who you'd target, actually?
You've got to try and stop him, haven't you? You've got to try and slow him up.
Players like that, you know, the number 10s who come in between the lines and make things happen. They're the boys you've got to stop, and that's what most teams have trouble defending against. So, you know, it's a great addition for Chelsea.
Yeah, and he's certainly going to get a few welcome to the Premier League.
Sure he will.
Nudges and knocks as August comes around. Do you think Tammy Abraham could be one of the players who's going to benefit most from having him around?
Absolutely. I think that it's dried up for Tammy from a creative point of view. I think that you see Tammy in this situation. This is the game I was talking about. Very unlucky. That spell where it's not happening for him. Here, I think you just spin and just hit that first time, try and get it, because he's run out of space. Those were a little bit harsh, those two, to show at the end there, but it's just the way that he's kind of working off of scraps, and he looks like he's a little bit anxious.
Well, he is working off scraps at times, and if the X are there to create better chances for him, then obviously that's going to help. But of the big chances that he's had, he's missed more of them than anyone else in the league.
Yeah, what will happen with that, Kels, as a young striker and somebody that's been...
You could also say that he's getting more chances than a lot of players in the league.
Yeah, he's getting more chances. What that says to me is just he's been around the place with his loan deals, and he's finally got his berth at Chelsea as the number 9. And I think that when it started, we saw the confidence and we saw the goals, and he's still got a good return on goals. But when it starts going the other way with the continuous linking of they need a striker, we need a striker, you get anxious. You start to try more with your chances instead of relaxing. And that's what I've seen with him. He just needs to relax when the chances come. Just try and get it really simple. Just hit the target, make goalkeepers make saves. Like we saw with the Newcastle one, he's trying to go around the keeper. He's not got the space. The one where he's gone in, he's not reacted quick enough so he could get a first-time finish. Those things will come. He just needs to calm down.
So Tammy Abraham is a player who we're hoping next season will be able to benefit from having Ziyech in the side. But with Kepa, it seems as though his time at Chelsea is coming to an end. He comes in as a world record goalkeeper, and Frank Lampard has made a big decision by choosing not to play him.
Yeah, it looks that way. You know, when new managers come in, they have their own judgments on players, and clearly, as we've seen in the last couple of weeks, it looks like Frank's not having him. I'm not sure if it all stems from the issue he had with Sarri, where he supposedly refused to come off, or how he is around. It
certainly looked pretty strong that that was what was going on.
Be too impressed with that,
no, knowing Frank, played against Frank, and we all know him. I couldn't see he would take someone, if he has got that sort of bad attitude or thinks he's the main man there. I can't see Frank having that. So obviously it looks like he's going to make a change. You
know what I see with it as well, Miggy, is that the fact that he's cost £71 million, and the power they've given Frank in not picking him. If he wants to not pick him, says a lot to me. And if you watch Kepa's performances since he's been here, I've not seen anything what makes me think, I can see where he's going to do a David De Gea and just continuously get better. He's actually stagnated. He doesn't make great saves. He doesn't make the kind of saves that you think, oh my gosh, that was that kept them in the game. He doesn't do enough. And then you add into the Sarri situation. It seems to me if he could do that on the pitch and in the glare of the world, I don't know what he'd be like behind the scenes. And and like you said there, James, Frank won't have that. He might have seen stuff that he's not happy with. And like I say, Chelsea have given Frank like carte blanche to do what he wants.
If there is an attitude issue, you would imagine that it would be easier to put up with if he was delivering, but the performances haven't been there, particularly of late.
Yeah, that's right, you said there. I mean, the one thing you think about Kepa, he doesn't actually make those saves that you don't expect him to make. And even I remember De Gea's first season in England, 11-12, and at the start there was a lot of debate about him. He was struggling with the physicality.
Yeah.
But he was, even though he was he was struggling with crosses coming in, he was still making saves that actually think, hang on, there's something here. This is worth persevering with.
Yeah.
And he looks like that. But it could have a knock-on effect for Chelsea, certainly into their defence as well, if they didn't have a player who they were used to playing in front of him, Willy Caballero, because he is their cup goalkeeper.
Of manager of Chelsea, I think he have a good idea. He wants to bring the young players and the older players together to find out, to get our target to be in Champions League. He know how to bring the player to the best, and I think we have time to get what we want this season. Yeah. I think we have an important time of the season. I think we all fight for the 4th position and maybe more. And Man United was a bit behind. Now they close the gap, and it's a big opportunity for us to keep them behind or for them to close the gap. So it's an important game for both teams. We all know that Man United at home is a beautiful game, especially with what's happened in the first game. But we don't look like this. We just look forward because we want to keep the gap, and so that's why we need to win, not to get the revenge, but it's important for the fan and for us to get a good result there.
He is officially the nicest man in football, so there's a lot of goodwill for N'Golo Kante. What needs to happen for him to get back to the top form that we've seen him in? Does he need to move further back again, do you think?
Well, that's where we all recognise him as the world-class player that he is, and we saw in some of the clips him getting forward and scoring goals, of course, because he's got that ability. But for somebody who played that role, the only person I've seen do it like he did was Makelele, named the role after Makelele, but he was literally unstoppable in that position, and it's a position where you look at Chelsea with the amount of moving around of centre-halves that they've got, with the goalkeeper who's now being dropped and everything. You'd have thought that they wanted one solid thing that they can depend on there, but they've not put him back there since the Sarri days.
Yeah, it feels as though when Sarri was there, he was blamed for putting him in that position. Yeah. Now Frank Lampard's there and he's persisted with him. They're clearly seeing something about him in that position that maybe we're not as observers.
Yeah, I'm with Wright. I think he was the best defensive midfielder in the world for a good couple of seasons. You know, he did play as a centre-half myself. You know, watching him play, the amount of work he used to do for the centre-halves, that number 10 role that I mentioned, you know, in the holes where the centre-halves don't know whether to mark him or the midfielders. He'd take care of that job on his own. So obviously he's gone forward and done well because, like Wright says, his ability is unquestioned. But for me, he's got to play as a sitting midfielder.
Absolutely.
But will we see him do that, do you think?
It doesn't look like it, does it? I mean, Lampard seems to have his kind of way of playing and he's not going to change it. The one thing maybe when he's not playing defensive midfield, it liberates him for those runs forward, which is something different to his game. But that seems to be with a few rationale for it.
Yeah, but then you look at it, if that's the case, you'll be expecting what he gives as the defensive holding midfielder, this world-class performance on a weekly basis. If he's not able to replicate the same kind of form going forward to support forwards and link play and assist, why would you persist with it? Because then you play him in the world-class position that he can play in.
When he plays in that defensive field, as you said, it feels like he does the job of, 3 players?
Exactly.
So I think you're getting less out of Kante playing him forward than you are as a defensive midfielder. Like I said, for me, he was and probably is still the best DMF in.
He just stamped stuff out, James. It's just like you think, well, normally that would have been a goal or that would have been a chance on goal. He stops that, so he stops more chances on your goal.
The amount of balls he used to say the balls into the centre forward, he'd turn around and take it off the centre forward. It was easy to. I probably could have played centre half.
Well, like you say, it's a grown-up role in that team of really young players. And as you alluded to earlier, James, Chelsea only have the second youngest starting 11 in the Premier League this season. It's Manchester United who have the youngest. So when we look at the job that OleGunnarSolskjaer is doing, should we be paying more attention to the fact that they are such a young team?
I'm not so sure.
I'd agree, yeah.
It's Manchester United. I think everyone agrees that they should be doing better than
Yes, he's got to play young players, but they all say, and they love saying, you know, this is Man United and there's a certain expectation here, but there should be some pattern of play and some definite focus on how we're going to play and what we're going to do, regardless of how old they are. And that is what I'm struggling to find with Man United, Miggy, with all due respect to what Solskjaer's trying to do.
I was talking to someone near the club as well, saying an issue there as well is it feels like somebody's like playing young players for the sake of it and also because they have to, rather than having a set team with pros and young players coming in as part of a natural progression. I mean, Dan James being a class, he suddenly signed from Swansea and suddenly there's this massive responsibility on him and the team.
Dan James, for example, like you say it perfectly, he wouldn't have dreamt of playing this many games for Manchester United this season, but like you say, I don't know if it's necessity that they've had to play him or he's showing stuff in training, but I think if you ask Dan James himself, he can't believe he's played, you know, probably every game this season for Manchester United.
But the signings that he's brought in, OleGunnarSolskjaer, on his watch, and I know Manchester United have spent an awful lot of money, have been Harry Maguire, who at 26 for a centre-half is... When we talked last week about what they've done in the January transfer window, it was more in the context of Manchester United and their transfer policy and were they organised enough and did they have enough of an idea about what they were doing. But we didn't talk too much about Odion Ighalo and what he brings to the Manchester United side. So what do you think he can do?
Well, I'm delighted for him, first Nigerian player to play for Manchester United. Very excited, but the fact is, this was a few years ago with Watford, and he was literally on fire. You find where he pops up. He's got the ability to do this. He's very, you know, I'm not sure he's going to be as fit as maybe he needs to be, and probably that was why he's had to get himself even fitter. But you find him in this kind of position. He's got the capability of stretching teams. You want to see that from Man United, from the centre forward, holding the play up, bringing other players in, and hopefully that was his best return for Watford, and you're just hoping that he can find that form. You know, everybody's talking about, oh, why have they gone for him? I'm delighted that they've given him the chance, and it's the kind of chance that he hopefully can rise to, because then people will see, yeah, he's still got a lot to offer. I'm hoping that he can be a success.
How hard is he to play against at his best? There was a familiar face in there, James.
On the clip, yeah, he was tough. He used to square you up, and you know, we spoke about him a lot before this game because, like he says, he was on fire in this spell, and he had that chop. It was one of the best I've played against. And like you say, he's gone to a league where it's not as intense as the Premier League, and he's been away 3-4 years now. So it'd be interesting to see if he comes back. But there's no doubt, and if he's fully fit and sharp, you know, he can have an effect for Man United.
Can we just make it clear that it wasn't James, the defender, who fell on the floor? James was the further.
Yes,
I'm not sure that's deflected on me and gone over the goalkeeper.
Just in case people think that was you, Jimbo.
But look, he's been away for a few years, and obviously he's been playing in China, which is why he's been training on his own. I think he's due to meet up with the rest of the squad today. So it's going to take a little while for him to get into the rhythm of how Manchester United play. Is it hard to go in as a striker cold into a new set of teammates?
Yes, it is. What you ideally hope for is an early chance. You can take it because that takes a lot of pressure off of you. But then you've got to also add into the fact that, you know, where he's coming from. You know, he hasn't been in the Premier League for a while, and it's Manchester United. The whole world will be watching. You know, it's a lot of pressure. So this is where you're hoping that he can come in, get some chances, nick a couple of chances, and then that will then give him the time to get himself up to speed, because the goals when you're a striker give you time, the fans will give you a little bit more leeway. So the longer you go where you're not scoring kills, the more it starts to get difficult.
He's come in at the end of the January transfer window on a free transfer. He's a player that says he's big Manchester United fan, and there's been criticism of some of the big money signings coming in just for the paycheck from Manchester United supporters. But is he a player that has to do well at Manchester United, or is he a no-risk gamble?
I think there's a bit of no risk about it. The only issue for United is that it just if he doesn't do well, it will reflect even worse on their whole recruitment policy and how they let it get to this. I mean, we were talking beforehand, on that transfer deadline day, the amount of different strikers I heard United were going for, you know, like even taking punts at Pukki at Norwich, Danny Ings. I think there was about 7 or 8.
Glenn Murray.
Yeah. So if he doesn't do well or there's no impact, then it will reflect on that. But in the sense of him signing on his own merits, it's no risk. And beyond anything else, it's actually quite a nice story that he's someone who so wanted to play for United and so dreamed of it, kind of gets his chance.
It's amazing when you get signed for Man United, you become a Manchester United fan. No, straight. I'm sure he would have been a Chelsea fan if he signed for Chelsea.
To be fair, I think there might be evidence, but it is amazing how many times that happens. Suddenly there's pictures of them emerging with the duvet and everything, the pictures of players on their walls. In terms of a lot of the signings that they've brought in at Manchester United, they're expected to come and they're expected to hit the ground running. But in someone like Fred, have we seen a slow developer who might be starting to show signs of being the player that they hoped they bought?
Yeah, because when you look at Fred and what he does for Manchester United, we're not talking about a midfielder who's getting forward and scoring loads of goals, but in respect of keeping the play going and breaking up play and getting involved like that, yes, you know, he's somebody that the way it started for him, you know, it didn't start great. And this is what I'm saying. When you go to a club like Man United, any big club like that, for the monies that he came in at the time, 50-odd million, you know, you're instantly under pressure. And when you come in and you're not overwhelming, and you're going to get stick. And I think that he hasn't had the kind of support in respect of him playing the way he plays with the strongest team around him. You know, he's had to come in and fill in at different stages.
He had a few things going against him. Then he came into, it was just for Mourinho's last season. It was a very toxic atmosphere anyway, with Mourinho really complaining about transfers, and he was the one player they signed for big money that summer. So there was a lot of pressure on him into dropping into a difficult situation.
And you can see there from the numbers. Apart from anything else, he's just getting more involved, and he's getting more involved further up the pitch in the absence of Paul Pogba.
Yeah, exactly. Paul Pogba being out is a great way of looking at it. You know, like you said, he probably felt a bit undershadowed by Pogba coming for 50 million, but. When players come into Manchester United, I'm not sure they realise sometimes what they're coming into. You know, like Wright says, if you don't perform straight away at a high level, you know, the fans can get on you. But like you say, he's taken time to settle in and he looks a different player the second half of the season.
Yeah, it's certainly improved for him. But how much has it improved then overall for Manchester United and for Chelsea ahead of this weekend's fixtures? What are you expecting from the game? Save your predictions for later. Don't go too early then. But in terms of the pattern of the play, the way it sort of pans out, the game itself, without giving us the scoreline.
Well, Chelsea being at home, you'd like to think that they're gonna have a go at Man United and put them under pressure, because at the same time, Man United will play, and they do play better, especially when Rashford was playing, but obviously he's not there, better on the break. So it could suit Man United, you know, with Daniel James and you know, if Martial gets himself going a little bit, it could suit them on the break. But you know, I'm expecting Chelsea to have a go at them, because I feel that it's a Man United side that is young. And if you have a go at them, they could maybe, you know what I mean, they could crack under that pressure. And it's up to Chelsea to try and keep that pressure going. But you know, Chelsea at home, they've not been able to do that. They've not been able to see teams off.
Yeah. And that's it. And there's been a little bit of bluntness about them recently. I think you'd be a little bit disappointed in the goals coming from wide, in particular with Chelsea. And you were saying earlier about the delivery.
Yeah.
It actually, I mean, your instinct would be that it would be a high-scoring game, but actually mightn't be. It might be quite maybe tetchy.
Oh.